The battle for Normandy remains one of the key points of World War II. The fate of the free world hung in the balance. Thousands gave their lives along the French coast so that others would be free. It is the eve of the anniversary of the greatest invasion in history. D-Day, 6th of June, 1944. Maybe this has achieved some kind of folklore status. We have been invited to Broadmain Camp in Dorset, England, to join a group of living historians as they gather at one of the Allies' original embarkation points to remember the assault on Hitler's Festung Europa.
The locals have never forgotten the Americans.
So they shaved their heads and painted their faces to scare the Germans.
These men and women portray the heroes of Normandy with incredible detail and reverence. Some even parachuting into battle, as they did on that June morning so long ago.
Portraying things accurately, very seriously.
It's great to see everybody seeing the history, seeing what we've done. Brilliant.
We've got some guys here who collect some very, very big and very, very special stuff. These guys restore and operate jeeps, trucks and tanks from World War II. They are restoration guys, and some are reenactors, even parachuting from C-47s over Normandy, bringing the past back to life as living history.
You've got to fear it before the adrenaline goes, and then once the adrenaline goes you get addicted, and then it becomes enjoyable.
The first one is terrifying because it's just so unnatural. You shouldn't jump out of a normal working aeroplane, should you?
Living history stops at the door before reality takes over, but as the name suggests, they commemorate what so many did to secure our freedom. They admit freely that they are not heroes. They are simply treading in the footsteps of heroes. And these heroes came in many sizes, shapes and forms.
I landed here at Utah Beach.
Rick Forrest, Londoner, 2nd Battalion, the King's Royal Rifle Corps, C Company, 4th Armour Brigade, D+1.
You've got personnel, you've got vehicles, you've got equipment.
To understand why these guys do what they do, we have to go back. As part of the post-war generation, there were many mixed emotions about the war, especially as our own families and friends wanted in the main to forget about it and get on rebuilding their lives.
Here is the ordinary serviceman, now getting into his demob suit. Without him, 1945 could never have been victory year.
It was a taboo subject, but some of us wanted to learn more. And parts of this history are being rediscovered day by day.
I'm telling the story. I'm able to tell the story, and that's what it's all about. I'm a British bloke, do you know what I mean? I'm ex-army. Yeah. Grandad was a commando, the other granddad was at RAF, but he was a commando as well. So they're my heroes, if you know what I mean. Dad was a para. I've learnt so much about living history. That's what gets it for me. This is what I grew up with. You know, I grew up playing on the old airfield, so, you know, hangars, deserted watchtowers. And it was the romance of sort of being there, and if I got there early in the morning, you know, on my little bike, cycling up and down the runways, would I hear the Lancasters coming back? It was that sort of excitement, you know what I mean? And I think that, along with the stories that Grandad used to tell, sort of started me on this. But it's always been me trying to reach for it, trying to bring it back.
Here comes the stirring sound of martial music.
A major influence was the presence of the Americans. To the war-weary Brits, the Yanks were from a brighter, bigger, and definitely more prosperous and free world than existed in wartime Britain.
But the girls loved them. With their smart uniforms, their dollar bills, and their jitterbug dancing, the Yanks had launched a sort of Operation Romeo, and had captured their defenseless hearts.
With better uniforms, equipment, music, food and pay, and a carefree attitude, they became the symbols of hope to the gritty and war-weary British population.
We've had nearly 600,000 men from Dunkirk, from Cherbourg, from the Belgian coast, but they've returned home without any equipment, and clearly we're next.
The when and where of arrival is not for publication, but the why is common knowledge. Another great influx of American units for the invasion of Europe. When the balloon goes up, these fully trained men will participate in the greatest military expedition.
As American GIs and machines flooded into this small island, bent on pursuing Dwight D. Eisenhower's noble cause, the Great Crusade, they brought relief from years of deprivation and fighting on several fronts. It wasn't just on the land and the sea that this battle was being fought and prepared for. As the south coast became full of ground troops, the east coast of England became full of aircraft and air crews. In the air, the US Air Force joined with the RAF in pounding German cities and manufacturing bases. And the friendly invasion of soldiers from the New World, our cousins across the sea, became part of local life.
They were all 18, 19, 20.
They bled and died just like our boys.
I think they got a taste of freedom. Now we're here, now we're going to get it sorted out and then we can all go home.
3 different bomber wings and several fighter squadrons, all coming from separate English airfields, are to be used almost simultaneously in the raid. LeMay's 4th Wing is to rendezvous with its fighter escort on the way to Regensburg, bomb the factory, and then fly on to Africa. Scheduled to coincide with the attack on Regensburg is a diversionary attack by the RAF on German airfields along the coast. 230 flying fortresses of General Robert Williams' 1st Air Wing. They are to proceed to Schweinfurt to bomb ball-bearing plants before turning back toward England.
The Americans didn't carry such a big bomb load, but they were more heavily defended. And the whole concept of the 8th Air Force was that they designed special formations, boxes, etc., to maximise the firepower of all the machine guns in the group or the box, and therefore they thought that they could fight their way in, drop their bombs and fight their way back. And unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. They learnt the hard way.
By the time the bombers reach Schweinfurt, the Luftwaffe has downed over 30 fortresses. Frustrating matters further, the factories in Schweinfurt are spread far apart and shrouded in artificial smoke. While the raid on Regensburg causes major damage to the plane factory, most of the bombs in Schweinfurt miss their mark. The fact that the largest and most complex raid yet attempted by the American Air Force in England has been foiled by the caprices of weather demands reconsideration of the tactics underlying the entire bombing campaign against Germany.
The whole area was about 2 miles by 3 miles, and it would have had 3,000 Americans based here. I reckon for every one in the air there was at least 4 or 5 on the ground, all the support staff.
Many villages and farms in southern England were taken over by Allied forces as training areas.
Whole villages in southwest England had to be evacuated so that American servicemen could be trained in the sort of landscape they'd soon be fighting in.
General Devers has called them our unsung heroes. They have accepted the blow because they realize that by their sacrifice, men will be better fitted for the coming invasion of Europe.
For many Brits, with the Americans now on their side, the chance to strike back became a reality. Revenge for Dunkirk, many other bitter defeats, and the terrifying blitz of their home cities where thousands of civilians lost their lives. Retribution was in the air, and the arsenal of democracy was there to help. Men and machines poured into this area from ports around Britain, and one of those embarkation camps was located near Broadmain, in sleepy rural Dorset.
up in the park field over that side, there was all listen huts all the way around. There was all army there, and they used to march all down through up to the church, and when they were stationed there.
But with Broadmain, we actually had the 1st Infantry Division. They moved in August to September 1943, and they stayed until the 1st of June. When they first came, with open arms, people were pleased to see them, and they've got all this, all this food. There's all this money. There's chaps that we interviewed talking about, it's the first time I've ever saw a digger, when they're putting in all the car parks and fixing the roads and building all the jetties and the hards and everything. All this sort of construction gear that's like, all this modern technology that the locals had never seen before. They were like, wow, who are these guys?
I think it must have been overwhelming for the people, especially Castletown. It's such and Weymouth is so, we're a small little town, and I think all of a sudden to be overrun with Americans, so it was exciting as well as really sad.
The whens and wheres of the invasion are kept even from those who will execute the largest amphibious assault in history, charging an entrenched enemy that has proven himself a master of defensive warfare.
And I think to have woken up one morning and everybody you'd got to know in the last, few months, just one day you get up and they've gone, must have left them all feeling quite bewildered, I think, as well.
Since early curiosity about this period, the living history groups have expanded their interest, with accurate research and painstaking effort in portraying people and events from these times. This historical interest of reenactors and restorers has a very serious side. It's a lot of work, a lot of research, and a lot of time.
It was an episode on Auschwitz, and I can remember saying to my dad, well, what was that? And he obviously explained, what had happened, what they found at the end of the war. And I just kind of wanted to learn more, why this all had happened. A girl growing up who didn't watch a terrific amount of television, so I spent a lot of time with my nose stuck in a book. Spent over a year researching a specific field hospital, and I wanted to tie this particular hospital into the 29th Infantry. And once I'd got onto this and I discovered it was the 51st Field Hospital, and I went down this, everything in my life changed, from the no cooking, no cleaning, to realising it had gone dark and I was still looking and digging.
I'm a strong believer of this sort of learning by touch, if you want to say it politically correct, and this hands-on experience, sit in the dodge like I'm doing here.
Together, let's get the fight going.
The Sherman, it's a D-Day veteran. It was knocked out and then it was used by the French army afterwards.
The driver down there,
yeah.
Machine gunner over there,
yeah.
That's the commander's place where you are, and you had the loader and the gunner for this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
This one here, we know this one was with the 28th Infantry Division. It was in Bastogne area, saw a bit of action. Everything has got a story, even down to helmets. We've got a medic's helmet that was worn on Omaha Beach. An American medical officer. I've got all his maps. I know, I've got his orders for landing on the day, the morning of the 6th. All this sort of stuff, which sort of just takes you straight there.
It's not a cheap interest to pursue. Even the humble Willys Jeep, in good condition, can cost between $12,000 to $30,000. A fortune compared to its original price from the factories. And as the machines get bigger and more thirsty, so does the price tag and running cost. One man who now makes a living out of producing the canvas covers of war machines for collectors worldwide tells us about why he does this and some of his experiences.
Sometimes people think I'm a multi-millionaire because I've got a Sherman tank. Yeah, it's worth a lot of money, but it didn't cost me much when I bought it. I paid next to nothing for it. It was a wreck. The cost of running it today is expensive. It drinks 2 gallons every mile. 9 quid per mile. If I put in 100 quid worth of fuel once a month in my tank for a run round, I'm not drinking now. I enjoy a drink now and again, but I'm not at the pub.
The Sherman tank served faithfully in great numbers with the Allies. but it was not always thought of fondly by those who had to fight with the relatively thinly armoured vehicle.
Sherman. Crap. The man who designed our tanks never ever got him one. He couldn't have done. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had any care for whether he lived or not. That's all it was. Fucking useless. Ping pong ball.
Like all tanks, it was a tight fit inside, and its vulnerability to anti-tank guns and bigger German tanks made its speed its greatest asset. I asked Jim about the relevance of these machines to veterans and their families today. He told me about a recent trip across Holland with several other vehicles, when the tank column stopped in a small Dutch town.
Coldstream Guardsmen of the Guards Armoured Division get a rousing welcome in friendly Holland. The people of Enschede on the Dutch-German frontier really appreciate their first taste of liberty in 5 years.
This Dutch lady came up to us with her husband and said that the tank was special to her because her name was Lillian. When the battle was raging, she was born on the Sunday. Her brother, 5 years old, was killed the same day. Her husband went out, was in the street, talking to some British Tommies, and said to one of them, "What was your favourite name?" "Lillian." And they called her Lillian.
The excited town doesn't see much of them. They have urgent business on the other side of the German border.
If it wasn't for people like myself and the people who restore vehicles, what would happen to them? They'd be melted down and turned into something horrible, you know. So.
Jim has also got himself a field tractor and an anti-aircraft gun. And I asked him why and what do you do with it?
Spend time researching where it was used and who it was used by. Like, you know, the 110th were attached to 1st Infantry. So, in searching stuff for that, I found that album. This chap, his name's Howard Mueller. He got his sleeping quarters when he came over on the Queen Mary. You know, the whole life story. Bit which I thought was lovely. That's the check sheet of from his tractor when it went onto the LST just prior to D-Day. Yeah, for someone to keep that all these years, that's amazing. The checklist there, the bloke that signed it off, driver's name, the vehicle number.
Putting together old trucks, tanks, half-tracks, all the big heavy stuff from World War II. And they have their own special reasons for doing it.
And we had a fantastic time. The Dutch are the most lovely people on earth, you know, they're just superb. But I feel a bit uneasy with it because it wasn't me. I've never fought, never been in the army or done anything like this, and I find it, I struggle with it sometimes. If it weren't for people like myself with these old military vehicles, perhaps it would be forgotten. You know, it sparks up someone's memory, you know. And some of the stories we get told, because someone sees a truck or a jeep or something and they drove it during the war or they drove a tank, and the stories that comes out, even their kids have never heard it. You know, it's like a key to a lock that opens up somewhere that's been kept locked for 60, 70 years.
Jim was also heavily involved in the armour and embarkation reenactment event as part of the build-up to D-Day, organised to be in Broadmain on the site of the 1st Infantry embarkation camp. Heavyweight machines are being brought there from all over England and Europe.
Cut off. Travel is strictly regulated, and a 10-mile area inland from the channel is declared off-limits to all unauthorized personnel. Within this perimeter, there is an increasing sense of anticipation. Desperate as they may be to get on with winning the war, men throughout the Allied ranks realize that the road home runs through Berlin. Where that road begins, on what unnamed beach, they do not know.
The strange thing about Dorset is it's quite a sleepy rural county, and all of a sudden there's thousands of these American soldiers turn up, and It was the black guys, they were the guys that came there first, and they were friendly, and the people in the county, created these friendships. Engineers, beach surveyors, all leaving the marks on the trees just for posterity, because they knew they were going away, they didn't know when they were coming back.
Having grown, look, they've just got bigger, because that would have been about the height you would have carved, wouldn't it? Trees have not gone higher, so this is the height they were, but they've just got wider.
The British people, who have stood fast in the face of doom for more than 4 years, are once again called upon to sacrifice in the name of freedom. Communication with even so close a neighbour as Ireland is cut off.
The coloured soldiers were kept in a bivouac camp in the woods just to the outside of the village. You could go into these woods, there's still a few bits and bobs sort of hanging around, but they weren't as permanent as the ones for the white guys.
When we got shipped out to England, we didn't know what to expect.
First putting their way right into Furioso.
Most of us guys had never been out of Detroit, never mind out of the country.
Proper true friendships were made with these guys.
It was a strange country.
Sort of summer '43, when the rest of the Americans started to arrive, there was a bit of a thing with the locals feeling protective over the African Americans.
Some of the guys got pretty wound up about it.
The locals took the sides of the African Americans, and there was quite a few fights, even gunfights. It was like the Old West down some of the streets.
Our task in this enterprise was to get Jim's tank 100 miles from his workshop in Gloucestershire to the marshalling camp on the English Channel. And what better way to do this than with an original wartime Diamond T tractor unit and transporter trailer, which all fully loaded up comes in at a meaty 60 plus tons. God knows how he gets his trucks down here, but these are the sort of roads that were used to launch the Normandy D-Day operations. Thoughtfully, Jim had loaded the tank up on the previous day, and so we were spared that little drama. Like the well-oiled machine they are, the lads got together, hitching up the truck and trailer and tying down the tank. After some last-minute tinkering with the monster engine in the Diamond T, we got down to some serious route planning. This centred on avoiding steep hills, up or down, which is almost impossible in this part of the country, and the constant gear changing to get almost 62 tons of heavy metal safely to its destination. And with an almighty roar, the first leg of our journey began. Driving this sort of heavy machinery is a craft, and to apply this to today's traffic can make the job even more difficult. There are few of the comforts of modern day trucks, and sometimes other road users don't readily appreciate this. In those days there was no power steering, life was a little bit more simple, uncomplicated, but also a little trickier when you consider the size of the trucks and the size of the vehicles they had to handle. The country roads were a tight fit, but the lads got through Bristol city centre traffic on a Friday afternoon with an air of nonchalant competence. Well done. How's it going, guys? Doing all right? Once clear of the city streets, we headed south towards the coast, in the footsteps of many who had travelled this route 70 years ago. This was a common sight in World War II, as the English narrow country lanes became clogged with convoys hauling men and machines southward to the embarkation ports. The journey was long and slow. The 70-year-old truck pulling 30 tons of tank and 12 tons of trailer and ballast made Jason work through all the 12 gears with no automatic transmission or power steering. Sometimes it was good to give control over to the co-driver and check how things were going on. The radio had informed us that there was a bad accident ahead and several roads had been closed. Our carefully worked out route plan went to hell in a handbasket very, very quickly. So we've broken off contact with the tank and the transporter. Basically it was getting way too involved with scooting ahead and going really, really fast, and then raining, and a police accident, big accident with helicopters and fire engines and all of that kind of thing. So I decided to take a look at some of the small villages on the route through Dorset, where Allied soldiers were billeted and camped prior to embarkation. When I first came here 13 years ago, there were 2 coachloads full of American veterans snaking down these little roads. There was the stars and stripes on the flagstaff of the church, and the veterans got out, and this was where they came for their own Sunday worship. They were stationed approximately 4 miles down the road in one of the camps. This must have been a great salvation to them. I'm not what you would call a religious man by any means, but places like this, with all of the mementos left from generations and generations, it's a passing of time and a continuation of time. Life still goes on. The church visit put me behind schedule, and I arrived at the campsite to see Jason, Jim and the team setting up tents and generally getting things in order. As usual, I was relegated to sorting my own stuff out and assigned cooking duties for breakfast in the morning. Later in the day, other vehicles started coming in from France, Holland and Germany. Jim wanted to test his Sherman's running gear, ready for tomorrow's events, and took it for a trip around the camp, before reloading her onto the trailer.
3rd, 4th, 5th, and first is button over and down.
The industrial powerhouse of the USA produced almost 500,000 Sherman tanks.
Faces of these women linger sweetly in his memory as he stands watch on a rolling ship's deck in the Pacific, or pensively reflects on the next bomber mission. But in many cases, those gentle ladies to whom he bid farewell may not be as far behind as he thinks. They may, in fact, be as close as the steel hull of the ship on which he serves, or the riveted shell of the plane in which he flies. Women on the home front are answering their own recruitment call, pouring into the factories, shops, and service professions that keep the country running and its guns firing. They're looking for the latest fashion trends that go no further than the nearest Boeing plant, steel mill, or Jeep assembly line. This season, smart headgear is definitely in. Bandanas, hard hats, and welders' masks meet the dual needs of function and, well, function. The modern riveter won't be seen anywhere without the latest in denim coveralls, and steel-toed boots never seem to go out of style. Most of the wartime jobs available to women can scarcely be described as glamorous. Heat, dirt, and oil are their lot, whether it's operating heavy machines, sifting gunpowder, or welding sheet metal. Working side by side with men, these plucky patriots punch their cards at the steel mills and the shipyards, sharing the labor as well as the hazards. Our boys overseas depend on American industry to supply them with everything from the uniforms they wear to the shells in their guns. And the gals back home are rolling them off the production lines in war-winning fashion.
The choice of engines for this vehicle was vital. They had to be powerful and reliable, but mostly they had to be available. The American Air Force, Navy and automobile industry had developed several power plants for use in their aircraft, trucks and boats. These could be harnessed to the new design, and as no new innovations were required, could be manufactured in great numbers. This set the design criteria, giving the M4 a very high profile, especially with the air-cooled radial right Cyclone and Continental engines. The basic design was progressed from the M3 lower hull, using similar suspension units, transmission units and track layout. The major difference being the addition of the fully traversing turret. This one-piece cast item could now be manufactured, and the top deck of the hull made strong enough to support it and its heavy 75mm gun. At its height, one Sherman was being produced every 30 minutes to satisfy the needs of the expanding Allied armies as they began to wage war on many fronts around the world. The American motor industry swapped its production of country sedans for the harsh world of military hardware, often making great use of female labour as the men increasingly were shipped overseas to fight in the tanks rolling off the production lines. The M4 Sherman tank became the workhorse of Allied armour during World War II. As the conflict became all-enveloping, the Allies geared up for mass production, and the Sherman tank typified the weapon of an industrial war. Inside is where the turret basket hangs, letting the gunner, loader and commander swing round with a gun. It's claustrophobic, noisy, smelly and very dangerous. With a highly inflammable engine behind you, surrounded by rows of your own ammunition, and only 5 centimeters of steel to protect you from armor-piercing shells, it's easy to feel very, very uncomfortable. Especially when you know that the enemy has a bigger gun than you, and is probably lining you up in his sights right now. The top speed of the M4, around 25 miles an hour, was much appreciated by the British tankers, as was the rotating speed of the electrically powered turret.
When do you think the gun on the Sherman was designed? It was designed before World War I, and they used it because it was 75mm, rapid fire, and it was a good artillery piece. They're all right, provided you haven't got to fight German tanks. Yeah.
There is no doubt that the M4 was under-armoured. 5 centimeters of armour would not stop a German 75mm at even 2,500 yards. This often led to the lead tanks in a troop being brewed up in a matter of minutes by a well-sighted anti-tank gun, or a Tiger with its 88mm, well before the enemy were even spotted. This constant proximity to sudden death does make you appreciate some of the stuff these guys went through. When Operation Overlord was being planned, dangerous reconnaissance work was carried out against the German defences, and the Allies knew they had to improvise with their existing armour to overcome many of the obstacles they would face in the first wave. The Sherman tank was part of this.
Field Marshal Rommel ordered nearly 4 million mines to be buried along the coastline of northern France, forming a seemingly impenetrable barrier. Field Marshal Brooke made the decision in 1943 to create new units to deal with these problems. Command was given to Percy Hobart, and so was formed the 79th Armoured Brigade. Monty also put his weight behind Hobart's work and took up the needs of the 79th with General Eisenhower, who slashed red tape and gave top priority to the US manufacture of the odd-looking tanks and attachments Hobart required. A high-level push of this kind, and Eisenhower's support of anything likely to save lives, soon provided the resources to assemble Hobart's menagerie, as it became known. The 79th Armoured Division has been called the tactical key to victory. because it was a division that fought not as a unit, but had its elements farmed out to the Allied armies wherever they were needed, frequently finding themselves alongside infantry regiments, hussars and cavalry, even working in close support of US troops, and was the only British unit to do so. Hobart took this principle and adapted the cumbersome Matilda mechanism to run off the main drivetrains of Sherman and Churchill tanks. Both tanks performed well, the flails thrashing the ground ahead of the tanks with heavy steel balls on the end of chains, attached to a rotating spindle, exploding any mines they hit, and could cut a path 9 feet wide for other tanks to follow. The Sherman Crab was offered to the Americans for D-Day, but although Eisenhower was enthusiastic about many of the funnies, take-up of the flailing Shermans was minimal at this time. Launched in the first waves of D-Day, the flail tanks played a vital role in clearing the way for more armour, men and machines, to cross the beaches of Normandy. Later, the Sherman and Churchill flails proved their worth in the night marches of Operation Totalize, as the British closed in on the Germans near Falaise, an advance that would have been impossible in the dark without these devices.
Into the town, you can see a seawall. To get over that kind of seawall, you'd run one of these vehicles straight into it, try and climb up it, and when the vehicle's up at 45 degrees, you stop. Mounted on the top would be a bridge. The next vehicle would just go straight over the top.
Can I get out now?
Yeah.
Thank you. Coming with you.
But the American and British infantry were not assaulting the beaches alone. Whilst they were due to cross the channel in boats, the initial assault came in by air. The newly formed parachute regiments of both nations were to secure the flanks of the invasion beaches.
Leading the way in the pre-dawn hours were more than 23,000 parachute infantry troops of the U.S. Army's 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions. This is the first mass deployment of American parachute troops, for airborne warfare has a relatively short history in the U.S. Armed Forces, and its best and most effective uses have not easily been learned. On June 25, 1941, the U.S. War Department approved the organization of its own parachute test platoon, made up of volunteers from the 29th Infantry Regiment, stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia, and officially activated on July 1st. The pace of their training showed just how important the War Department considered the new doctrine.
Jump school was, we were in such good shape. So we skipped the first stage, which was the physical part that broke a lot of guys out. And we went right into B stage, which was jumping out of the fuselage of the planes. And
they prepared for jump school by jumping into piles of sawdust from a dummy airplane doorway, and then from a 35-foot-high jump tower in a cabled parachute harness.
Then they take you up on these real high towers that go up like 200 feet, and you're in a chute and it's all hooked on the side, and you can see the whole camp from up there, you know, all the barracks and everything. And then the following week, which is the fourth week, you start on Monday. You make a jump on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and you get your wings. Tough.
After they had completed their training in the USA, in preparation for the D-Day operations, the 82nd and 101st were stationed at Up Ottery in Devon. We went looking for the airfield.
A little fella told me in his lovely Devon accent, and he said, "Oh, you're just go along right here and you'll see the old sentry box in the corner. Can't miss them." It's generally frightening when somebody says you can't miss them. You can imagine that fresh troops with big trucks and jeeps, etc., might have had a bit of difficulty, as I am, finding the way round. Or small lanes around here with the high hedgerows gave the troops some idea of what they might be facing in Normandy. Let's see, shall we? Even in a high vehicle like this, it's impossible to see anything. You just cannot get through these hedgerows. And this was to become a major obstacle, fighting through the bocage countryside of Normandy. Well, the old guy was right. A mile up the road, the sentry box. Just as it was back in '44. The sentry box has become a small shrine to the young men who had made this part of England their home, but on the night of June the 5th, left it forever. Going along the old perimeter road of the Up Ottery airfield, and there in the distance is the tower. It's a sobering thought that these young men boarded their C-47 transports from this very airfield, bound for another foreign land, and many would never return alive. Truly, we are treading in the footsteps of heroes. Meanwhile, back at the Broad Main camp, as people and machines settle down after the long drive here, the camp began to look like it might have done 70 years ago. With the tank and trucks safely stowed for the evening, it was time to let one's hair down a little bit and just enjoy meeting old friends and a couple of beers and some good old-fashioned music.
Yeah, it's original American uniform. My husband really loves these things, so I try today. How do I look?
What have I got? A lot of scrap. That's what my wife calls it anyway. Yeah. Well, as a kid, we were hauliers. Our local recovery company had diamonds and scammels and used to pull our stuff in when it was broken. And the magnitude and size of them just overwhelmed me then, and that's what it bit a big push to us. As a little boy.
Fire up time. Yeah, take the tent off. And let's travel in style.
There was even chance to talk to the owner of a rare old British truck at this mainly American meeting.
Oh yeah, excellent. They've got a very good reputation for reliability and get going anywhere slowly.
Have they got a top speed of
30, but you don't always go that fast. And you don't need to go any faster, I can tell you. They're trying to keep it out of the ditches.
I covered the baby's ears when we were combining this.
And so the evening passed. Some dancing, some drinking, some jolly japes, and getting ourselves ready for the next day's road trip.
Steak.
Oh.
Steak to the pies.
It's now 6 a.m. and after a fairly quiet night, it's great to get up this morning and not only see the vehicles as there would have been in exactly the same spot. See the initials on the trees, you know, where the guys carved their name before they left, uncertain of where they're going to go, where they're going to be, even if they'll survive. Put the camera on, get stuck with doing the cooking. After suffering the ritual abuse of cooking breakfast for some rather bleary-eyed tankers and truckers, we attended a safety meeting given by our leader, Jack, who acknowledged the help of Jim and colleagues in organising everything and faithfully promised never to do this bloody thing again.
I said, no, they said, we're help.
We collected up our convoy of jeeps, trucks, tanks and transporters and dispatch riders. Set off on the first part of a run along the route that the armoured and infantry divisions had taken regularly during the build-up. And burning at least a gallon a mile, the Shermans raced through the narrow lanes, shepherded by the dispatch riders who made the way clear for all of us, and helped keep the public safe. These were sights that hadn't been seen since the first week of June in 1944. Even crossing the ford was a documented wartime event. There was no time apparently to build a bridge. Bearing in mind that these vehicles are over 70 years old and have seen a lot of wear and tear over the years, there were few breakdowns and stoppages, a testament to the time, effort and money these guys put into their pastime. But we gave enough care and consideration to the vehicles to allow them a little stop now and then.
Bit of adjustment on the clutch at the minute, gives me a bit of clutch slippage for access. Don't forget, this thing's empty, the tank is empty, there's no guts in it at all. No muscles. But
Which was time for a quick pee, and also the Brits did a tea break. After following the prescribed embarkation and training routes from D-Day 1944, we turned this long column around and headed towards Dorchester for the Dorchester Summer Parade.
It's marvellous where it all come from, isn't it?
Again, the evocation of wartime scenes as American and British troops fill the pubs and streets of small towns before being locked down as embarkation dates approached.
Simpler times, different times, when everything was more black and white than it is today. Common enemy, etc. So we should be going in just a few minutes when the road is finally cleared, and going to join the main parade.
Just admiring that it's just such a stunning sight to get everybody here. You just got to look back on the work that we've all done to get here. It's just kind of a bit emotional.
As Jim mentioned earlier, these machines and their crews brought back many memories for local people and a lot of interest. With the help of our wonderful British bobbies and some local organisers, we were almost ready to go.
Yanks all over the place, down the roads, everywhere, especially along Queen's Avenue, where you've got all the trees each side.
Hello, this is Jack, who leads
Jack.
this motley
Good afternoon,
crew.
sir. Good afternoon. Yes, it's all my fault.
Yes.
Brilliant.
So Jack's going to sort you out to get you into one of the vehicles to go round the parade, okay?
And with a roar of mighty engines, our Diamond T and Sherman tank joined the parade down the main street.
Months before D-Day took place, I spent all the Dorset was a fortress, wasn't it? I mean, I lived here, I was born before the war started, so I can remember what it was like. I mean, I was only 6, but when you're that age, you still remember things. So we used to sit when we were kids, we used to holler out to them, "Got any gum, Chuck?" And they say, "Yeah, we got gum. Have you got an older sister?" And then just one morning, we got up to go to school, junior school. Nothing, gone. Just disappeared. Didn't know over days, hours, gone.
No matter what colour their skin, they were caring. They used to feed the local kids breakfast in the morning. There's guys that still come in today to sort of look round, and they remark that Not only was it weird on the 6th because all of a sudden everyone had disappeared, but they'd actually come down to the camps to be fed their usual breakfast, their fried breakfast with the GIs, and there was no one there, just a big empty space with some rations left for them. They filled their tanks. This obviously took a long time. Then they do an about turn and they were straight out of the village up over the Ridgeway Hill. It was a one-way system, so there's no traffic coming down to block them. They needed to get them from the marshalling area to the embarkation area as quickly as possible with no one blocking the way. It was move, move, go, go.
This ancient Roman road, modified by American Army engineers, was the most direct route to the embarkation ports in Castletown and Weymouth.
The section we just came back there, and also in this bend here, the engineers had to actually straighten the road. We had some right angle bends that the farmers used to use because this was sort of just a track really. They couldn't get the howitzers or all the big vehicles around, so they had to cut through the elbows. There's about some 14 camps in the area.
Over a period of 48 hours, Allied troops and equipment were moved down roads such as these to the waiting ships and landing craft in channel ports, all along the south coast of England.
Infantry and armoured divisions of the Allied forces began to embark over a period of days onto the huge landing craft which would carry them across the channel to land on the beaches of Normandy. Meanwhile, Allied airborne troops began to prepare and board their transport planes and gliders, ready to jump into Normandy and protect the flanks of the invasion area.
Finally, the day came. The action for which the Screaming Eagles had been created more than 2 years ago, for which the men had endured the most rigorous and physically challenging training in U.S. military history, and for which the whole of Europe had been waiting, got underway just after midnight on June 6th. The first of more than 1,000 C-47 transport sorties left Portland Bill on the south coast of England for Normandy.
You're actually here in a wartime building, you're here where everyone embarked from. Portland Bill, or Bill of Portland, it was codenamed Flatbush, so again all the airborne stuff came across Portland. Everything airborne, glider airborne, the paratroopers, the whole lot, all came across that big space above us there to Portland Bill, switched the nav lights off and went straight across to the Channel Islands, turned left, and there they were, sort of right in the thick of it straight away.
Many of those who etched their names on the trees enjoyed a few beers with the locals, and possibly some wartime romance, but soon they would be gone. In cold, cramped conditions, these young men left the land that had been their home for a short but intensive time, boarded the cavernous transports, and joined the invasion armada across the Channel to Normandy.
Ground Service. Here is a special bulletin read by John Snagg. D-Day has come. Early this morning, the Allies began the assault on the northwestern face of Hitler's European fortress. The first official news came just after 9:30, when Supreme Headquarters of the Allied Expedition Report issued Communique Number 1. This said, under the command of General Eisenhower, Allied naval forces supported by strong air forces began landing Allied armies this morning on the northern coast of France. As announced a little later, this army group includes British, Canadian and United States forces. The Allied Commander-in-Chief, General Eisenhower, has issued an order of the day addressed to each individual of the Allied Expedition Report. Your enemy is well trained, well equipped and battle-hardened. He will fight savagely. But this is the year 1944. The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty and skill in battle. You will accept nothing less than full victory.
Maybe this has achieved some kind of folklore status, mythical part of our past, that's still accessible. Every time I come to this part of the world, I feel a deep connection for everything that went on in this area during the war. From the windswept beaches along the French coast, to the narrow lanes, rolling hills and small villages, the legacy of this momentous battle remains, and still holds a fascination for thousands of people. We take you on a tour of those beaches and explore beyond the landing grounds. From the western flank at Saint-Mary-Glisse to the eastern flank of Pegasus Bridge, with living history groups in the footsteps of D-Day veteran heroes, as the battle for Normandy and the liberation of Europe took its bloody course. One of the first things that strikes a visitor is the size of the conflict here. It's a huge battlefield. Massive. It is no understatement to say that the success or failure of this, the largest ever sea and airborne invasion, set the scene for the geopolitical map of Europe, and indeed the world, for almost 3/4 of a century. What we see here now, the events that unfolded, the people we meet, and their actions during that time, fashioned the world we live in today.
The roaring of all the planes going over, it's something you'll never forget, I'll guarantee.
6 June 1944, England. Just after midnight, enormous formations of Allied bombers, transports and gliders depart for Normandy in the first phase of Operation Overlord. Aboard is the first wave of the long-awaited cross-channel invasion. Paratroops of the U.S. 82nd and 101st and British 6th Airborne Divisions. Their job is to defend the flanks of the invasion beaches by securing key bridges and road junctures.
Before I came over to Normandy this year, I took a detour to locate the original airfield at Up Ottery in Devon, where the US paratroopers and gliders took off on the eve of D-Day. Any deserted airfield is atmospheric, but here the history is tangible. It's quite an eerie thing to go trundling up and down the old runways where once would have been DC-3s, gliders, training aircraft. Some of the old buildings are left there, where the men would have been stationed. It's quite a bleak place this time of year. I don't think we're actually allowed to be here, but what the hell, nobody's shot me yet. There in the distance is the tower, control tower. Quite a few ghosts around in this area, I guess. These guys set off from a beautiful, typical English landscape. and jumped into God knows what.
The tension in the air is palpable. There is the occasional joke, gallows humor in the face of fear. But mostly all that can be heard is the drone of the engines.
The primary mission of the 101st Airborne was to take the town of Carentan. By doing so, they would link the beachheads at Omaha and Utah into a continuous run.
The guys went out of that thing like they're shot out of a gun.
The British 6th Airborne Division are charged with securing bridges over the Dives and Orne rivers. In addition, they are to silence a massive German battery near Merville that is zeroed in on the far eastern invasion beach. In a daring maneuver, the Brits in Horsa gliders land mere yards from a crucial bridge over the Orne. The Germans, caught completely off guard, are quickly routed. A small cafe near the bridge is set up as a field hospital, and the troops brace themselves for a counterattack.
I'm here to meet some guys from England. They said they're around here somewhere, but obviously I think they're pretty well camouflaged. Difficult to find anybody around here, and no wonder people got so lost. I can hear a vehicle. There they are. Down the narrow twisting lanes, I followed my contact Darren to the Round Canopy Parachute Team's HQ near Fraysville, just outside Saint-Mary-Glise. I soon found out that these guys were a truly international bunch, who all had their own reasons for doing what they do.
Morning. Morning. Born in Buffalo, New York. My day job, serving in parachute units since 1997. When I was a cadet and coming up, kind of gave me the impression that paratroopers were the best, the baddest of the bad. Culminated with commanding a battalion of the 82nd over in Afghanistan.
I've done reenacting and living history in the UK, and then I came out here and decided to take the ultimate step and start parachuting. It's partial insanity, I think. It's a mixture of things. There is the thing, keeping the history alive, keeping the memory of these guys alive, whether they were British, Americans, German, French, keeping the history alive of what they actually did and what they went through and what they suffered.
As usual, many of the guys take their research and personal interest very seriously.
At Fort Bragg, the 82nd Living History Detachment took our job as portraying things accurately, very seriously, and we were all serving paratroopers. We used to rankle a lot of the other people that did it on the weekend, that we were very precise and very accurate in our portrayals. You want to portray to the general public the accuracy and where to cut corners, and you know, where does Hollywood begin, and to the point where sometimes other reenactors didn't like having us around. You have the rotund, you know, pushing maximum density, heavy drop, but our unit was actual serving officers and non-coms and then some privates.
Still don't know why.
Why we jump? I live in Eerde, that's in the middle of the drop zone of the 501st Parachute Infantry Regiment. We jumped there in September 1944, and I've been studying this regiment for over 35 years. In fact, I've got 3 reasons, I have them with me. That are these guys. This is Jacob Wingard. He was an observer of a mortar platoon, and he was killed in a windmill in Eerde. And I'm the miller of the windmill. His helmet is still in there. The bullet hole, which was lodged in the wall, is still there. We renovated the windmill, so it's back in the state as it was in 1944. The other reason is this guy. This is Bobby Hunter, D Company 501, landed in our backyard, and he became a second dad to me. He got me into this parachute thing because he saw me as his second son.
If you hold your elbow up in about 1 arm length.
He called me up and he said, my son's joining the airborne demonstration team and I want both sons to do it. So that's how I got into parachuting. And the other guy, this is Bert Collier. It's his lieutenant. And I got very close to those guys, and that's the reason I'm jumping, to honor them. I do it for the history. I don't want to show off. I do it out of respect of the guys who came here. And we have a tradition together with Jim Locke. Every time I'm on the drop zone, we take a sip of whiskey and a big cigar, and we honor the guys who didn't make it. That's the reason why we jump.
Being a member of an airborne living history group is a little more complex than being ground-based and driving, say, a jeep or truck or even a tank. Although the ground guys take their interest equally seriously and are very careful about how they portray and use their heavy machines, they are not leaping out of a perfectly good airplane 1,500 feet from the ground with only some string and silk and Mother Earth to break their fall. There are strict rules. Despite the apparent air of levity, there has also been an awful lot of pre-training for this.
Basically, all of Normandy is a drop zone, but we're going to do our best to get inside this red box that's right here. Do not do a downwind landing today.
People have to be qualified and pass exams and assessment before they can even put a chute on.
Fear is adrenaline, and then adrenaline turns into enjoyment.
It's just like any other airborne course. You do 5 qualifying jumps, and then you get your wings, and you're a qualified parachutist, and then you can do all the Normandy commemorations, market garden.
You're going to get whatever stick you're on, stand up, and you're going to stand up towards the open door. Take a bite 2 inches. Try to take it a little bit underneath the sewn webbing, because that's where the safety's going to grab it. All right, it's really quiet. You can hear everything, but this thing's a kite. It cannot fall out of the air.
The 2 divisions, whose drop zone constituted the right flank of the invasion force, were to clear the way for the landing force at Utah Beach, to soften the German defenses for the attack to follow, and capture a handful of bridges that would be vital to any German effort at reinforcing the coastal defenses. No sooner had the first wave of 9 C-47s passed over the French coast than they found themselves completely enveloped by heavy clouds. The lead group of 3 planes held course, but the 2 following groups veered off in opposite directions as the pilots sought to avoid the possibility of mid-air collisions. Thus disrupted, the formation disintegrated completely.
The sergeant woke me up saying, "Sir, we're coming in over France." As we got in the red light to stand up 5,000 yards offshore. In case there was any aircraft fire, we might have a chance to get out of the ship if it was hit. And I'm watching that black coast of France come sliding in from under the left wing, and we got 8 minutes to the drop zone flying time. And then we got 4 minutes from that till you're back out over the channel again. And I'm looking out of the door, looking ahead, and I can see fires burning on the ground, and I yelled to the troops, "We're in great shape. The Air Corps has bombed hell out of things. The houses burning up ahead of us." I didn't realize till the next day that those weren't houses. They were planes from the serial ahead of us that had been shot down.
Heavy fire from German anti-aircraft positions added to the pilots' fear and confusion, and coupled with the cloud cover, practically guaranteed that they would not be able to hit their precise drop points.
Just before we jumped out of our plane, we were in the line, we were in the door. You could hear the artillery shells and whatnot, and all of a sudden we heard a hell of an explosion, and I was right up near the door behind the sergeant, and we looked over to the right. The plane there, with jumpers in it, just deteriorated. There was 17 guys, jumpers, 2 pilots, and a co-pilot. Every one of them dead right now. That's when you first, registration comes, first time in your life, you're in combat.
The plane I was in, we had never reached a jump yet. We hadn't stood or hooked up. Our plane got a direct hit. Until this day, I cannot tell you how I got out of the airplane. I guess I was the only survivor out of the plane.
The guys flying those planes were rookies like us, okay? We'd never been in combat. They'd never been in combat. And where they were supposed to take you didn't happen to too many of us. The minute
the Germans started opening up, shooting at them, and they were flying low. They started spreading out. They didn't hold their formation. They dropped it here and there. They didn't slow down like they're supposed to. And the guys came out, and the chute snapped open so hard, gun and a holder would bust off of their side. Their water canteens would break right off their belt. And some of them, you know, got hurt because of the opening shot.
The guys went out of that thing like they're shot out of a gun. The number 6 man, the plane yawed wildly. He had his carbine stuck through his webbing, and he was lodged there. He wasn't there 2.5 seconds. Those guys built up behind him. All I could think was somebody squeezing a grate. He was gone too. I was looking down, and I could see water reflected in moonlight, and I could see what in that fleeting glimpse seemed to be whitecaps. I said, "Stop, we're over the ocean." I don't think the guy even knew I was there. I think he was so frantic to get out of that plane. He ran right through me, and I bounced off the door to the crapper, to the head. And 3 times more, "Stop, we're over the ocean." Same thing. I got so tired of bouncing off that damn aluminum door. All of a sudden, that was the emptiest cabin I ever saw in my life. Even the crew chief was gone.
It's the best feeling, especially with the C-47 jumps, because you've got that notorious prop blast. When you exit the door's there and the engine is just there, so all that turbulence actually pushes you to your left when you come out. Jump out and the prop blast actually turns you to the left, and it's a bit more of a sideways sort of opening. It's not a long drop. The first one is terrifying. Because it's just so unnatural. No, the second one was the worst because you know what to expect. The second time round, you've also seen the parachute being packed, so you know exactly what goes in that bag, which makes it a little bit more, have I done this right, have I done that right? As many people will tell you, the reason RCPT do it is to honour the guys who never made it, and also the veterans that are still here.
Sometimes the historical connections between then and now can seem a little too real. And, as this young paratrooper currently on active service for the 82nd Airborne tells us, it was different back then.
That would have been nerve-wracking because they would have had more on them. They would have had a whole combat load in addition to it being nighttime and bullets flying in the air. That would complicate things. It's already a difficult task, but to add that on top of it would make it that much more stressful for those paratroopers back in 1944. I was older than my great-grandfather. He didn't jump in, but he did storm Omaha Beach. So it's kind of surreal to be here doing this 73 years later when he did it for real.
I landed just by the side of the river at Lafayette, and I was coming off the drop zone, and there was an 82nd Airborne veteran there. He asked me how old I was, and I told him I'm 20. He said I was 20 as well when I came here 70 years ago, and he said, where did you land? I said, just over there by the side of the river. And he said, that's near enough where I landed 70 years ago. And I think that was one of the best memories I have. And obviously we can't ever experience what they went through. We wouldn't want to. We had the highest respect for what they did, and unbelievable sacrifices that they made. But it was great to share a conversation about that prop blast from the C-47. You know, to have something in common as well and be able to talk about was great. Really great.
With the run-throughs complete and the jumpers all checked out, it was time for the ground team to get the LZ ready while the jumpers drove to Cherbourg to pick up their aircraft.
So what we've got to do is get to the drop zone.
Maybe this has achieved some kind of folklore status, a mythical part of our past, you know, that's still accessible.
What are the chances they're going to actually jump with the winds and stuff?
You don't like to jump more than 13 knots. Once the jump starts, like when I was in with the 82nd, once they got all that mass tack, you jumped. They do not stop the sticks, the flights.
Seems like we've sort of arrived a bit earlier than the rest of the team. So we could be either left or right of this road. take some readings on scene, and then decide the best place for the team. After that, the ground team will actually go around the fields and sort of marking out hazards like barbed wire, anything that can cause injury to the guys that are coming in. So yeah, a bit of work to do before the actual drop takes place.
The jump was to take place over the small village of Fraysville, close to St Mary-Glise, and one of the many desperate and confusing small battles fought out in the Normandy countryside in the early hours of June the 6th.
The difficult task of landing the gliders is made even more harrowing by mine-tipped stakes dotting the French countryside. Their senses peaked. Every snap of a twig or rustling leaf raises the hair on the backs of their necks. Slowly, they form into small groups, attempting to reach their objectives. Several units of the 82nd land directly in St Mary-Glise.
Gliders pulled the airborne people, which my brother happened to land at 2 a.m. in the morning, about 2 miles out of St. Mary-Glise, with objective fire for the USS Nevada.
St Mary-Glise itself has become almost a shrine to the spirit of the American airborne troops and their many followers, and as such is a little touristy. But this is the place where some of the scattered 82nd Airborne parachutists landed, in the middle of town. Some hung up on trees, one on the church, and many shot and killed as they attempted to land. After fierce fighting by the scattered troops in the area, the town became the first to be liberated in France.
Somewhere between 40 and 50 when I picked up a machine gun team. And as usual, the big guy was carrying the tripod, the little guy was carrying the machine gun. And they said, "What's your plan?" I said, "Fall in behind me." You should have heard that guy swear at me.
In the kind of irony that only war can produce, the confusion among the paratroops also worked in their favor. The German command could detect little rhyme or reason to the drops. Unable to determine where the weight of the attack was concentrated, they couldn't decide how to deploy their defenses.
With surprise on their side, the paratroops succeed in driving the startled Germans from the town, thus securing the first French city to be liberated by the Allies.
A few miles away in Fraysville, we awaited the jump of the RCPT. I'm here in the middle of a field in Normandy, setting up the landing zone for elements of the 82nd and 101st Reenactment Group, and also the RCPT.
We represent 506, their battalion. There was a group of 13 men called the Filthy 13. They left from Exeter a few hours before the main landed. Most of them were engineers, 101st Airborne engineers, and they were dropped in various places. Some put beacons up to guide the planes, others blew strategic places up, like at Brabant. There's a very grey area as to why they did this. Apparently the official reason was they were called the Filthy 13. They never washed. And because they never washed, they suffered with lice. So to stop the lice, they took their hair right off. And other people say the Germans were told that the Filthy 13 were Native American Indians, Mohawk Indians. So they shaved their heads, painted their faces to scare the Germans.
Have you washed?
Yes, every day. But I've not shaved today. So yeah.
And we're busy setting this up so that they've got a target to land in when they jump out of the Dakota.
The maximum for us is 12 knots regular and 15 when gust 15.
Yeah.
If it's now, it's okay. Vous allez arriver de la mer, c'est ça, et donc vous verrez par la porte le thé légèrement décalé.
And on the threshold of conditions, we were relieved to see the 73-year-old C-47 come into view. The jump master and his stick go through their preparations. As the lumbering C-47 circles the drop zone. Finding the DZ in these conditions is not easy, and a marker is dropped to help gauge wind direction. The guys on D-Day did not have this luxury. Then the aircraft were hit by flak batteries and other ground fire as the pilots fought to keep control of their craft, many being lost on the way. Then comes the most anxious moment, where training and a good jump master come into effect.
The first one is terrifying. You shouldn't jump out of a normal working aeroplane.
You've got to fear it before the adrenaline goes, and then once the adrenaline goes you get addicted, and then it becomes enjoyable.
But in the C-47 you just need to throw your right leg out, jump out, and the prop blast actually turns you to the left.
Both sticks managed to exit the aircraft successfully.
Bounce. I watched some of these young American airborne guys yesterday, and when they hit the ground they bounce. I don't bounce anymore, I just dig a divot.
After that, each man is on his own. Strong winds blew many of the jumpers into adjacent fields, some frightening the local residents.
It's okay! It's all right!
How was that? That was very good. Yeah. It was a quick landing, fast.
And I came in on a little road, took about 3-4 running steps, and went right through a wooden fence head first. Broke 2 teeth off. Just broke them off, you know, where the nerves are hanging out and all. And getting out of your harness in those days was a bugger. Later on they came with enough, but you just turned and hit and they all released. These you had to unhook. And with all that equipment on, it was a... Anyhow, I tried to get out of my chute and I was having problems, so I pulled my folding stock carbine out and loaded it for shooting, and I looked up and the people that were right in the yard next to me were gone, period. They were long gone.
Brilliant. Brilliant. A lot of wind. I was out late and I could not make it to the drop zone, so I landed right here in the field between the cows. And it's funny because cows are standing in the field and they don't look up, so I started making a lot of noise and then they separated, and that's how I went through it.
I made some friends, especially, and my parachute did as well, in form of, you know, this brown stuff.
Gick ju före oss. Jag lämnade på den sidan, tror jag. It's not a landing, it's a line from another chute.
We had a safe landing, and that's the most important one.
Securely on the ground, there was a fair amount of celebrating later in the day, and our cameras moved on across the battlefield to Sainte-Marie-du-Mont, close to Utah Beach and the scene again of heavy fighting. Here we met with Dutch reenactors in the town square.
I'm still used to do the double clutch, even in the Jeep I'm double clutching.
Yeah, me too.
There's no need for, but I still do it. It's a habit. I can't get out of this habit.
Mostly portraying 82nd or 101st Airborne troops, who encountered some bitter fighting as they fought to keep the roads open to Utah Beach, so that the 4th Infantry Division could work its way inland.
American troops coming ashore at Utah Beach are pulled 2,000 yards east of their assigned zone by strong coastal currents. What appears at first to be disastrous for the U.S. 4th Division turns out, in fact, to be a lucky break. The defenses in this area have been wholly decimated by naval gunfire. Giant coastal guns are heaps of twisted metal, and machine gun pits have been buried in avalanches of sand and debris. Resistance is quickly smashed, and by afternoon, advance units have made contact with the paratroops of the 82nd.
The weather worsened, and people sheltered where they could. Have you come far?
From the Picardy, close to Paris.
Okay.
But myself, I'm from Holland.
presenting a great opportunity to meet one guy who had been here 73 years ago.
My name is Milt Staley. I landed here at Utah Beach on D-Day. I was attached to the 4th Division, the 4-leaf clover. As I recall, I thought it was sunny, I'm not sure. They cleared up for D-Day and we were laying on the beach after we got ashore.
When the men of the 4th Division came ashore at Utah, the 101st were waiting in the dunes to greet them.
Well, it's a long story, but they brought up 2 tanks, and they said there was some woods there, and they said that they figured there's about 300 Germans in the woods, so they put some of the guys on the tanks. I don't know what we're supposed to do with 300 of them. We're going down the road, and the first tank hit a mine, tipped over, and that aborted the mission. Nobody got hurt. Scared. See, with the 4th Division, when they put us with us, we were back of the church in St. Mary-Glees. The 82nd Airborne had dug in, and when they left, then we took it over for that one night.
Torquay?
Torquay.
Yeah.
It's not too far from Plymouth. People were good, countryside, a lot of flowers. Yeah, they treated us real good. Well, I drank a lot of beer in them days.
It didn't matter, huh?
Yeah, it didn't matter. Then, 23.
23. 98 now.
Thank you.
This is his 4th
This
time
will be-
besides the original.
Yeah. First time was free.
Right. This restoration and reenacting pastime is not entirely new to us. When I first started coming to Normandy, 15 years ago or something, we were just a ragtag bunch of lunatics who enjoyed restoring old vehicles and going to famous places. And expeditions to the Normandy battlefields have been a major part of this pastime. Normandy has become almost like a pilgrimage. It is the battlefield. There is a reverence, a homage, an act of respect.
Just a little.
Because this was a very mechanized war, if you're reenacting it, at some point you're going to need something mechanical. And a lot of that is very, very heavy metal. Sometimes finding and retrieving these old pieces of heavy metal involves a fair amount of work before you even start restoring. I had to dig these 2 Dodge trucks out of a swamp in Canada. After almost 20 years of sinking into the ground, and then some gentle coaxing, one of the trucks eventually fired and ran, but it didn't stop very long. To get a further insight into this world, I arranged to meet Jim Clark of Allied Forces Canvas for brunch at his workshop, deep in the Gloucestershire countryside. Believe me, he has some really big pieces of heavy metal. Morning, gentlemen. I should have known I'd end up being chief cook and bottle washer. It's always the same with these guys. Highly trained, experienced cameraman, world traveller, still ends up having to cook the bacon and eggs in a garage. I got some multigrain bread to make you fit and healthy. Egg, bacon, thick bread, all you need. You joining us, Paul? As I got on with cooking breakfast on a World War II petrol stove, Jim busied himself with something a bit more technical. On his wartime Mack truck, one of the US Army's prime movers.
Trouble with the fuel system. I think the turbo is playing up, but the other thing is the fuel pump needs winding up a bit. Give it more boost.
With machines of this age, there's always something that has to be done. Such a lovely day in England, we don't get many of these, so we better sit outside and enjoy it.
Okay. While I'm messing about with this, Jimmy's on the phone talking to somebody in, what was it, Bordeaux? Bordeaux. About the big thing behind us there. So tell us about this thing then.
Right, it's an M4 high-speed tractor.
Yeah.
Built in 1944 by Alice Chalmers. Well, I got the tractor and I bought the gun to go with it, a 90mm anti-aircraft gun. Mark them up in the markings, 1st Infantry Division, because as you know, we've been following 1st Infantry Division since 97 when we first went down to Weymouth.
Yeah. They went to Omaha.
They went in on D+1.
On D+1?
Yeah.
So is that why you guys like going back to Normandy so much?
Yeah, because obviously where we live, all this area and south of us was just littered with camps and stores, dumps and vehicle parks and ready for D-Day to go over, and that's why we've done that so many times.
The contact in Bordeaux had come up with information that placed Jim's high-speed tractor as one of the vehicles that landed at Omaha Beach on D+1.
So I give him my chassis number, and he's literally just come back with the registration numbers for them.
So is that kind of authenticity important to you?
Yeah, it is, because there's no point in having a vehicle and taking it to Normandy or taking it to any show with markings which are completely wrong.
How long have you been doing this then?
We started in 1998. It was just a hobby, just something to do half a day a week, and it's now 2018, so we've been doing it 20 years.
From those early years, Jim has built up a successful business, supplying canvas hoods, fittings and rebuilds for the people who restore these machines worldwide. Living history has now become more popular, but years ago, when we arrived in Saint-Mary-Église for the 60th anniversary of D-Day, it was more like a bunch of like-minded blokes who really liked the jeeps, trucks and tanks, grabbing bits of complimentary uniforms where they could, and were not so set on the full immersion of the historical recreation of the times. Jim Clark takes up the story of his fascination in the early days with wartime military machines.
My GMC that I bought that we went to France in, that was ex-Norwegian, and it only had something like 14,000 miles on the clock, and it was in mint, kept in storage.
And why the American vehicles in particular?
The American vehicles were much nicer to look at. There's more style. You know, a Diamond T, for instance, is lovely, the shape of it. Or even the sort of GMC, it's got lovely lines. Because they were manufacturing cars and vehicles, trucks and things, they were stylish, you know. Our stuff was a bit Heath Robinson. It's just, you know, flat panels, angle iron, and some of them, I do love them, but they are hideous. They really are. You know, look at the Ford and the Chevy C15 cabs and 13 cabs. They're just ugly, but they are appealing to some people. But not my cup of tea. I just like the American stuff.
The story of Normandy and the invasion of Hitler's Europe has been no stranger to these guys, and perhaps because of the massive historical impact of this event, has drawn them to these beaches for many years. Following that fascination with this period in time, for the 60th anniversary of D-Day, we'd attended a parade in Weymouth and met up along the front at the original 1st Infantry Division embarkation port. Then the Normandy veterans were still relatively sprightly, showing a great interest in the vehicles the group had provided. The crowds were very appreciative, and there's a real sense of occasion. A respectful acknowledgement of the achievements of previous generations. And despite the realisation that time was even now running out for these veterans, there was of course a lot of cheeky British humour to lighten the load. One GMC helped another, and we headed to the original wartime embarkation ramps. After ceremoniously dipping the trucks in the English Channel on the same hard standings that the Big Red One had used to board their landing craft 60 years previously, The small convoy of trucks, jeeps and enthusiastic hangers-on boarded the cross-channel ferry to Cherbourg. It was not a good crossing. Dodgy food, dodgy beer and bouncy seas dampened a few spirits. But on landing, the drive down the main road to Saint-Mary-Glise brought us to our first main destination. As this was the 60th anniversary of D-Day, the present 82nd Airborne were on hand to provide ceremonial duties, honouring those past and present. It was one of those leaps in time to see the fresh-faced young kids of 18 to 20 years old parading through the town square, where so many of their company predecessors had landed, fought and died 60 years before. Ever keen to get our trucks into some off-road action and a breath of fresh air, we roared past some of the other guys in the town square, heading for the beach at Utah.
Hopefully we can actually get on the beach just down here.
The sand looks wider up there.
We're going to drive down, there's the front.
First time I came, and I came in the ambulance. We went in through Caen and stayed in a chateau, miles from anywhere, way too far down. So everyone told me what they're doing, if you had to drive for ages and ages just to get up to the beaches and all that.
After an hour of thoroughly enjoying ourselves, the tide came up and narrowed the beach. And the soft sand showed what a problem it could be, even for a six-wheel truck in high or low ratio.
Stuck fast. I'm afraid. Either on, I picked the speed up as I came around the corner, and now I'm going forwards or backwards.
Just the occasion to find out who your mates really are and if their winch still works. Further east, we followed the coast towards Omaha, looking for Point du Hoc, but also stumbled across a relatively new development in the Normandy story. The battery at Grand Camp Maisie was an impressive array of long-range artillery pieces covering Utah and Omaha beaches.
We enjoy this place here.
Yeah.
And we learned that's a very interesting site.
It was almost hidden from view at the time of D-Day and built in total secrecy. It was to have been taken by the Rangers. Newly discovered German bunkers that weren't taken until the 9th of June. Apparently the Rangers were supposed to take them earlier than that, but their commanding officer didn't move off the Point du Hoc. These guns bombarded the American positions on Utah and Omaha. This must have been horrendous. You can see why the shelling did not have much effect. They were so well concealed that any accurate aerial bombing was almost impossible. These walls are thick. Very, very thick. The lights go out, I'm buggered. The owner of this museum took it on himself to explore it and started digging and uncovered this because part of the way through June the US Army bulldozed all over this land, covered it up. Further east, the almost impregnable and commanding gun battery of Point du Hoc stands as a monument to the tenacity and aggression of the US Rangers as they scaled the near vertical cliffs and silenced the garrison there. The position had been blown to pieces by US warships and Allied bombers, but the guns were not in location. They were being refitted at workshops further inland. What began as a routine tour of the battlefield, with some fine reenactments and a homage to the veterans of this battle, started to take a darker turn, and slowly came to mean something more intimate, revealing the complexities, both personal, political and military, of the nature of this campaign.
Disaster looms. The rough seas and bitter German resistance threatened to throw the men of the U.S. 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions back into the sea. Dual-drive tanks, unable to weather the heavy surf, sink long before reaching shore. The men, heavily laden with equipment, struggle through the chest-deep water, subjected to streams of machine gun fire and crashing shells. Many who are wounded, unable to fight the surging sea, drown. Those who reach shore huddle behind beach obstacles, gasping for breath, longing for safety, which is raked by German machine gun fire. Hundreds die in the frantic dash. The beach is littered with the broken bodies of men and smoldering equipment.
Much has been written about Omaha Beach and the horrendous losses the Americans suffered there. Many of those who died or were wounded on this infamous stretch of sand and shingle set off from places like Broadmain on the 5th of June, embarked on their ships in ports such as Weymouth, and said goodbye to England forever. At Omaha, the bluffs the landing troops had to assault are now more eroded, but in 1944 they were steep and defended by machine gun nests, well-sighted guns in deep bunkers, minefields, and pounded by the heavy guns of Grand Camp Maisie. And it is the link between places like Broadmain Camp in England to this beach and others that first brought our reenactors here many years ago. At around 6:30 a.m. on the 6th of June 2004, we drove to Omaha Beach and parked up our trucks as a service was being held on the bluffs at one of the memorials to those who gave their lives on that fateful day 60 years ago, almost to the hour. Part of the display for this event was a collection of ducks, or DUKWs, a seaborne version of the ubiquitous GMC 6x6, fitted with a boat hull and propeller that could take supplies, jeeps and guns from the larger vessels and drive them through the surf, up the beach and to the points of dispersal. Having driven one myself, they are somewhat challenging in rough weather, but on D-Day they performed their duties perfectly. Many of these shown here had actually sailed under their own power across the channel to Omaha Beach. We'd taken our trucks and jeeps up and down the shingle beach of Omaha, again encountering some of the difficulties facing the second waves of transport, which was vital to build up the supply of men, machines and supplies to the beachhead. To gain a rough insight into the logistics and number of vehicles involved during the 60th anniversary event, we sat back and watched the restored machines and their crews, who had come from many parts of Europe and even across the pond in the USA, roll inland from the Normandy beaches. This was a very small percentage of what actually happened on D-Day, but nevertheless it gives an impression of the amount of materiel involved in this campaign, and also how important it was to winning the battle to build up these forces against a well-defended and experienced foe. The size of the American cemetery above Omaha Beach is compounded by American casualties from other parts of the Normandy campaign, and slowly, in mute reflection, the scale of the losses sinks into the visitor.
K. Kittle, Elmo C. Farrow, Joseph Grillo, Edward J. Fogarty Jr., Howard Greenberg, Herbert L. Earl, Buildings moving the ground.
As we moved further east to the British and Canadian sectors of Gold, Sword and Juno beaches, there was further evidence of the task facing the Allies. The huge guns of the battery at Lons-sur-Mer remain now as an imposing monument, and were able to cover both the British on Gold and Juno beaches and the Americans on Omaha. 2 of the batteries were disabled by direct hits from British warships in the early morning. But it wasn't until later in the day the guns were finally silenced by combined barrages from more British, French and American warships.
On the far left, on Sword Beach, the men of the British 3rd Infantry Division meet lighter resistance than expected. The Brits quickly fight their way off the beaches and begin pushing inland to link up with the paratroops of the 6th Division.
All along the coast road, small monuments and relics highlight scenes of intense fighting by the British, Canadian and French troops against a well-prepared and strongly fortified enemy. The seaside town of Arromanches was spared heavy bombardment, as it was planned to be used as an operational port, fed by the floating Mulberry Harbour. It was taken by the British after heavy fighting involving specialist tanks, and is now a central point for veterans, associations and visitors. No matter how much flag waving, nostalgia and singing we do now, some of the guys who were there even 73 years later cannot get over the bitterness and hurt of those 80 days fierce fighting in Normandy. We caught up with some of them in a noisy pub in Arromanches, near where they landed 73 years ago. Some of these guys have achieved almost celebrity status and seem a little bemused by it all.
I was on landing street, I landed between Sword Beach and Fitzgerald. I went right the way from beating the Germans in Normandy to beating the Japanese, and all of a sudden, thank God, the Americans dropped the atom bomb. We didn't have to go. A D-Day man.
Second day at Juno Beach. The Kings were all right, we got with the Premier Light Infantry Regiment. The tanks can't move if they got up against a defensive position or a dodgy position. They can't go nowhere, they get knocked out. So the infantry has to go in and see what's going and clear the way. You can only use anti-tank guns, it's static, you can't put them on the move, so you don't use them too often. So you relied on the Piat gun, which was a big crap.
One of the many problems fighting in Normandy was working your way through the bocage country.
They were too well entrenched. Bocage was little areas. You couldn't see them. You couldn't see a tank that was dug in. You couldn't see an anti-tank gun. You couldn't see a mortar. You couldn't see a machine gun. You couldn't see them. They just come out of nowhere. Greatest defence position.
M4s were sometimes fitted with a Cullen device, a kind of plough fitted to the front of the tank, designed to gouge out gaps in the tangled hedgerows and allow some freedom of movement. Frequently, the first one through the gap was the first casualty. These gaps in the hedgerows allowed the infantry to break through into the next field. But all too often the dug-in Germans already had the tanks and the infantry in their sights. It was a costly business. Advances were often measured in yards as the Allies fought their way field by field, village by village, to break out from their beachhead. The Battle of Normandy became a sustained, grinding battle of nerves, straining men and machines to the limit.
The man who designed our tanks never ever got in one. Never had any care for whether he lived or not. Fucking useless. Ping pong ball. And the German machine gun, you fire so fast, it would sound like a dog. You go, wow. Did you know you smell German? All the boots were leather up to their knees. All their webbing, it was all leather. And they used to dress it with a special dressing. It used to stink. And if the wind's blowing, you can smell them. Right. War's never done anybody good. Never done it.
Old engineer. The same people who built the Mulberry Harbour, but I was on demolition, used to blow things up. You must understand that what the British Tommy got was a shilling a day. That's what they got, shilling a day, licensed murderer. I lost a lot of my mates here, and all for nothing really. This one. That's Legion d'Honour, Chevalier, and I never had anything from the English government at all, only headache.
A few miles inland, the British cemetery in the ancient town of Bayeux was where I met with Alfred Barlow of a reconnaissance unit.
My rank was Corporal Alfred Barlow at the 3rd Reconnaissance Regiment. Landed just off the beach at Luxembourg. They dropped us into the water in our vehicle about 10 o'clock in the morning, and we made our way through about 300 yards of water onto the beach. We came up onto the roadway towards Caen, and we were supposed to take Caen on the first day, but we didn't.
It's the ages of the men that are here. Kids of 18. You know, when I was 18, I could scarcely take the top off a lemonade bottle. Royal Marines Commando, 6th of June 1944, age 20. The East Yorks landed not far from here, and 250 of them were killed before midday. Big cemeteries are impressive, if that's the right word, in their size and scale, but also what really tugs at the heartstrings are the small cemeteries found at the side of the road, tucked away somewhere, still kept neat, tidy, tended. The German cemetery was also vast, with a sombre Teutonic atmosphere. The other cemeteries were smaller, the dead buried where they fell at the many ferocious actions between the fields and hedgerows. And for me, there was a comprehension here of the actual people, not just the numbers. On our way east, we detoured to take a look at a place where things went very wrong for the British, emphasising the size of this battlefield and the deadly effectiveness of the German forces. Villers-Bocage. As part of the pincer movement, an attack was ordered by General Dempsey involving the 7th Armoured Division, the well-known and effective Desert Rats. Their commanding officer at the time halted here and parked the division along the road. What he didn't know is that in the fields and woodlands close by was a small squadron of Tiger tanks. Now that might not seem much of a threat to an armoured division, but if you have a small squadron of Tiger tanks commanded by Whitman, it spells trouble. Whitman couldn't believe his eyes apparently. The whole division was parked up here, broadside on. Soft-skin vehicles, tanks, half-tracks, everything parked here waiting. So he simply found a parallel road. He turned his turret 90 degrees, slowly, methodically eliminating the 7th Armoured Division. The carnage was horrendous, but the damage to the pride of the 7th Armoured was something I don't think they ever recovered from. Coming to the end of this amazing trip, we reached the eastern flank of the invasion area, and the first building to be liberated by the Allies in France, again by airborne forces. This time, it was the Brits at Pegasus Bridge. After capturing the bridges, the airborne troops dug in to deny German forces access to the eastern flank of the invasion area. Madame Durand's cafe became a casualty station until the troops were relieved. With characteristic understatement, Dennis Coates told us some of his story.
Oh, it's cold.
Thank you, my dear. When?
Yeah.
The night before, the 5th, the night of the 5th, we landed. The hope was that we would have sorted it all out before the boats came in. It got a bit difficult. The problem was that we had a secondary jobs to do. Nobody landed here. Who would want to land here? No, they came in by glider here, of course. We should have come in Varaville, I think it was, dropping zone. But our pilots got deflected. Somebody was potting at them, I believe, and they didn't like it, so they got deflected towards the Dive. So they dropped half of the fellas in the Dive, in the floodwater, and the remainder of us on the land beyond it, you know. Canadians and the 8th Battalion had blown up the blasted bridges. We were not popular. After a lot of fun and games, and a week or so, we got captured. Yeah, and I got wounded, but we had some interesting times before we got captured, of course.
With overwhelming odds and lacking proper equipment, they attack. Casualties are horrendous as the men fight their way through the German defenses. After a harrowing night, the roar of naval gunfire can be heard in the distance. It is a welcome sound to the weary ears of the Allied paratroops. They have done their part to assure the success of Operation Overlord. Both flanks are secure, and exit roads from the beaches are in Allied hands. The airborne troops must hang on until relieved, but for now, all they can do is pray for the thousands of men who are about to step into history on the beaches of Normandy.
Guarding the flanks of the invasion fleet were squadrons of Royal Navy motor gunboats, one of which was moored up next to Pegasus Bridge. Not many boats can make it across the channel from Plymouth to Normandy in 3 hours, but not many boats are powered by 3 Spitfire engines.
She's a 2-pounder on the front, then you've got the twin Lewis guns either side.
Yeah.
Up half you've got the twin 20mm Oerlikons. We cruise at about 28 knots. Her main use, in a nutshell, is for causing trouble. It was get into trouble quickly and get out of it quicker. And I love it. This is my 4th trip to Normandy, and I wish to keep on coming.
Leaving the famous Pegasus Bridge, we started to head home, south to Paris, then England. In total contrast to the rough and obvious aspects of war, the beautiful Chateau Audrey south of Bayeux stands serene amongst tended grounds, trees and ornamental lakes. But it too yields a sinister secret. I wasn't aware actually that we were sitting right next door to a place of infamy. After fighting hard along the coast and further inland against the 12th SS Panzer Division, dozens of Canadians and some British troops were taken here after surrendering against huge and fanatical odds. The SS officers at first interrogated them, but they got little response. So they then had them marched off in small groups with their hands on their heads to the nearby woods and shot. Approximately 147 of them were killed this way. It's difficult to believe that scenes of such beauty and engineered calm could have produced such a barbaric act. As I found out with several interviews, barbaric acts were carried out by both sides.
In the British cemetery, people are 19, 18, all are wasted time. They could have been all over their mothers if everybody used a load.
The fighting here had reached another level. The conditions, the attrition, and the ferocity provoked things amongst soldiers that they would never believe were possible.
The people of my country, when we were there, we were all murderers. We don't take prisoners. The bloke would have been shot, no trouble. If you take a prisoner, you've got to look for him, because he'll get the first opportunity, he'll kill you.
you were in the front, a lot of us, we used a hearing and a smell.
From the 6th of June to the 22nd of August, 500,000 men were killed or wounded or missing. So what was all that about?
We put a good number in, and we put them in with force and to hold what we got. That was the important bit. We held this area for about, I don't know, 10 miles in, I suppose, and that was enough. There came the day when there was not enough of us, too many of them. We had nothing to fight with. They had everything, and so they put us in the bag. We knew they were coming because the motorbikes we dealt with were obviously in advance of the tank. We made it that they had no need of their motorbikes.
Bam, killed the driver, everything stopped.
They shot all the men, put all the women and children in the church and set fire to it.
As days go by, it staggers the imagination that in a few years these people, who have lived through such momentous world-changing times and helped alter the course of history, will be no more. What then of the deeds they perpetuated? Who shall remember them? As good men who did not stand idle, who risked and gave up their lives for what was called the Great Crusade, the fathers, mothers, uncles, aunts, brothers and sisters, who after a drink or two may have regaled us with wartime stories that we could not fully comprehend, they're leaving us now. They will not return. All the veterans I have met are adamant that they were not heroes, but that they were ordinary people doing their job and what was required of them, which sometimes meant doing something remarkable and something occasionally heroic.
People said to save the country. We were only concerned with our families, to be honest.
Following in the footsteps of Allied soldiers from across the globe, assembling in Britain to assault the Normandy beaches and free the world of Nazi tyranny, we know that the reenactor people are not the original heroes. They readily admit that, but they play a vital part in keeping alive the memory of those people who have given so much. And keeping the machines, boats, planes, tanks and trucks that these troops depended upon rolling and operational is a big part of maintaining that memory. All play a factor in remembering these courageous men and women, the lives they lived and lost, and why they fought. Our duty is to never forget them, celebrate the freedom for which they fought, and most of all, to never let this happen again.